Hi, welcome to Maggie Chats Books. Today I'm going to do my wrap up for May, what I read. I read 8 books in May, so let's get started. The first book I read was Carrie Fisher's The Princess Diaries. I got this on an ebook. I borrowed it from the library. I think most people have heard about this book. It's her last book she wrote before she passed away. She begins with the filming of Star Wars Episode 4, which was the first Star Wars, and her affair with Harrison Ford. I judged, yes, I think a 35-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman, she's going to have different emotions than probably he did. So she does touch on that she was pretty young, pretty naive, hadn't had many relationships, and follows that up with excerpts from her diary that she wrote during that time. And it's very much a 19-year-old's diary who's in a situation that's probably a little bit more than she can handle, especially with everything that's going on in her life. So that's pretty much the first 2/3 of the book. And then we switch to when she, probably the last 3 or 4 years of her life, when she's asked to do some Comic-Cons and conventions to meet fans, and she calls it lap dancing, selling your autographs for money kind of thing. And you can tell it's something that disturbed her, and I think a lot of it was that people would come expecting Princess Leia, and she was an older woman, and people would dress their kids up like Princess Leia. Goes, "Here's Princess Leia," and they would go, "You're old," which kids will do, and I think it upset her quite a bit. It wasn't where she wanted to be, particularly in her life. And I know a lot of celebrities enjoy meeting fans, but to her it was kind of a disappointment because I think people were let down when they met her. She didn't fit what they thought Princess Leia was supposed to be. So to me, I wasn't sure where we were going with this book. I'm not sure what she wanted us to get out of it. I was a little disappointed that it was her last book because it wasn't one that I really enjoyed. The poetry that she has in there and the portions from her diary are pretty much a 19-year-old's diary, so it's not great poetry, but it is real for a 19-year-old. I gave this book 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite. I wasn't really sure where she wanted to go with this, so that was the first one. Next book I read was 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hennef. This is a nonfiction book. When Helene was in New York just after World War II, she wrote a bookshop in London that was on 84 Charing Cross Road and requested some books. She started speaking with one of the managers there, whose name is Frank, and over about 20 to 30 years they corresponded through letters, of course, and became friends. Not only did she write him, but she wrote other people within the bookshop, including his wife, which they just became friends. The book, I think I've shown this before, but it's pretty much just letters back and forth. And like I said, a really quick read. Enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. The next book I read was another ebook. It was called After the Ending by Lindsay Pogue and Lindsay Fairley. This book is about a flu pandemic that impacts the entire world. Everyone comes down with the flu, but only 3% of the people survive. So it was very reminiscent of The Stand by Stephen King, and probably the first third of the book I truly enjoyed. That people were trying to gather and go to actually Colorado, like The Stand, and they found that most of them were given mental powers after they recovered from the flu, so you explore those. It takes place in the United States. There's 2 friends. One is on the West Coast, one is on the East Coast. They are pretty much like sisters, and they really want to get to each other, so they agree that they'll meet in Colorado. Where it went wrong for me is one chapter would be about one friend, the other chapter would be about the other friend, but toward the middle you could not tell which was which. The romances, especially the men in there, it was hard to tell which boyfriend was which boyfriend, and I found that it just stopped kind of in the middle to create these romances that were a little far-fetched to me because we just lost everybody in the world except for 3%, including family, and you're finding that your family died. And then we stopped to have these kind of romances and everything. What happened to each character was almost similar. Attempt on life, insane people, things like that. So it started losing me about halfway in the book. This is one of, I believe, 3 books, and I'm not sure that I will continue with them. I did give it 2.5, so rounded it up to 3 stars. Probably will not continue with that series. The next book I read was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I've heard nothing but great things about this book, so I needed to read it. It's funny, very clever story, very enjoyable to read. I didn't think it was great though, so I'm not sure I was the target audience. I do like science fiction. It was good. To me it wasn't great. I only gave it 3 stars. I'm sure many of you have read it, and I know there's a lot of people that love this book. It just didn't resonate with me, so 3 stars for me. The next book I read was Sleeping Giants by, and I'm going to say this name wrong, Stephenie Meyer. And this is the first book in a series. At least there's 2 books so far. This is a science fiction book. What happens is in the United States they find a part of a giant structure, which is a hand, the first piece that they find. Over the next about 20-30 years they find more parts to this giant and attempt to put it together. I did love this book. This book has some strong female characters in it, good character development. The story moves along pretty fast. A lot of things happen and you really don't know where it's going to end up, if this was a good thing or a bad thing that they're putting this giant together. So I gave this book 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I already bought the next book, which is called Waking Gods, and I'm trying to save that for later this summer so I have something good to look forward to. So anyway, I do recommend this book, especially if you're in science fiction and you want to get into another series. The next book I read was Penguin Lessons by Tom Mitchell. This is a nonfiction story. Tom Mitchell, when he was in his early 20s in the 1970s, took a job in Argentina to teach at a school. He's from England, and he went on vacation in Uruguay during that time, and he came upon a beach where penguins had swam through an oil slick and of course washed up and died on the shore. It was pretty horrific, but he discovered a penguin that was still living, and he took it home to his rental apartment that he was using for his vacation, and cleaned the penguin up and attempted to release it out to the wild. The penguin would not go, so he ends up taking the penguin back to Argentina with him, and the penguin lives at the school. I learned so much about penguins in this book, and I also just absolutely fell in love with everything that happened. This is not so much about saving a penguin, but the penguin's impact on other people's lives, which I think anytime somebody comes in contact with an animal, they impact them more than the animal impacts them more than they impact the animal, if that makes sense. And so it was just a beautiful story. I gotta say, I laughed and cried through this book. It was marvelous. I gave this one 4 stars. I really recommend it. This is also a Penguin book, published by Penguin, a Penguin book published by Penguin. But it's a really nice paperback. The pages are really nice. So if you want to get a copy, I would recommend getting this one. It's I think it's done in the UK, and I really enjoy this book. 4 stars. The next book I read was The Chemist by Stephenie Meyer. Stephenie Meyer, of course, did the Twilight series and the adult book The Host, which I enjoyed. This is not a science fiction book or fantasy. This one is a suspense thriller. I will link the review I did to this book. I did a review right after I read it. I gave it 5 stars because I just thought it was marvelous. I don't usually change my star ratings. I think maybe later on I might think it's not a 5-star, more a 4-star, but I just keep my initial reactions out there. So if you like a good suspense thriller with strong female characters that moves along and doesn't slow down, and it's about 500 pages, so that's pretty remarkable to keep it going for 500 pages, but I really recommend this book. 5 stars. It was my only 5-star one this month. And the last book I read was The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. This is a book with The Happy Prince, which is only 23 pages and in a huge font. if you can see that. And it's other short stories. So I read about the first 4 stories of this book, and I had read The Selfish Giant before, and The Nightingale and the Rose, and The Young King. There's 3 more stories I haven't read, but my main focus, and this was supposed to be my June TBR, but I hadn't finished The Chemist, so I went ahead and started this one. And it's pretty much life lessons, and mostly about how nature is pure and humans not so much, and that you need to do good within your life to reach that destination of heaven, or be accepted into heaven, if you will. Kind of written for children as well as adults. Like I said, I'd read The Selfish Giant before, which is another lesson. The Happy Prince I had not read before. I really enjoyed it. I think it's one that you could reread over and over, as well as the other stories within this book, and really, really liked it. This book is from Forgotten Books, which I've never gotten a book from Forgotten Books. The font, as I said, is really, really big, and it's supposed to be a reprint of classics. So I'm not sure if some of the typing or the printing issues are because they reprinted an actual book, or if it was a mistake. But just to let you know, there are some where the font slips and everything in this book, and maybe that's what they intended. It doesn't really distract from the reading, but it is kind of strange. So this book I gave 4 stars as well. I'll continue reading the other 3 stories. They go really, really quick, but the Happy Prince is one that I do recommend that you read. I have not read a ton of Oscar Wilde. I know that I read The Selfish Giant in school, and I believe we read parts of The Portrait of Dorian Gray, but I haven't read a lot of his books. So I think I will continue reading some. This is in the summer I wanted to read more classics, so this one is the first one that I started, and I have several more on my June list to read. So that's it for this month. Please let me know what you thought of these books, if you've read them or if you're planning on reading them. I know many of you are probably going, I can't believe you didn't love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I think it's just me. It's me, not the book. I'm sure that's what it is. So let me know what you're reading this summer, and give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!